The first warning came not as a grand declaration, but as a whisper among the star charts, a ripple through the interstellar communications that humanity had long ignored, accustomed as they were to monitoring alien civilizations from a cautious distance, knowing that the galaxy was vast and perilous, yet never imagining that the delicate threads of peace would fray so quickly. The Invar Consortium, a coalition of the most technologically advanced species in the Orion sector, had deemed humanity a minor concern, a curious but primitive species whose world had long been catalogued and whose military capabilities had been underestimated based on fragmentary scans and historical encounters that revealed nothing more than resourceful survivors who could adapt but posed no real threat. Yet in their hubris, they failed to perceive the subtleties of human ingenuity, the relentless drive that had propelled a species from scattered tribes to interplanetary colonists capable of bending both science and strategy to their will. And so, the invasion fleet appeared on the outer rim of the solar system, a shimmering armada of crystalline hulls and energy weapons that dwarf humanity's defensive satellites, its commanders confident in the effortless subjugation of a world they believed would fall in hours, perhaps days, yet they did not account for the silent infrastructure humanity had been quietly weaving. The network of orbital platforms, kinetic interceptors, and automated drone. Arrays that had been designed to test the limits of alien sensors and protocols, each system calibrated to strike with surgical precision yet adaptable to unexpected maneuvers. And when the first tendrils of the Invar fleet breached the threshold of Mars orbit, humanity did not panic, did not scatter. Instead, Admiral Elena Vargas, a veteran strategist whose career had survived political infighting, budget cuts, and simulated galactic war games, gave the order to activate Project Bastion, the code name for the first phase of humanity's counteroffensive, which involved not a frontal assault, but a meticulous orchestration of electromagnetic pulses to disrupt the alien fleet's communications, followed by targeted destruction of key energy conduits, rendering the leading cruisers temporarily blind and isolated, and as these initial strikes crippled the front lines, Earth's command centers relayed the data to the fleet of human fighters stationed beyond the asteroid belt, nimble ships that exploited the confusion to strike from unexpected vectors, weaving between the debris of shattered alien frigates while the Invar command, assuming their superiority still guaranteed control, scrambled to respond but found themselves reacting to maneuvers that no historical precedent could prepare them for. While on the ground, humanity mobilized its planetary defenses with a coordination that reflected centuries of simulated conflict and centuries of real human resilience, and civilians trained in emergency protocols manned relay stations, repair bays, and tactical observation posts, feeding data back to the central command while engineers implemented rapid field adaptations to weapons and shielding, each innovation born from necessity, each improvisation a step ahead of alien tactics. And in the midst of this chaos, humanity demonstrated a trait that no scanner could quantify, the ability to anticipate not just the physical moves of their opponents but the psychological. Miscalculations, the overconfidence that led the Invar officers to assume compliance where there was none, underestimating the human capacity for moral reasoning intertwined with cunning. And so, the invasion that was meant to be swift became a drawn-out spectacle of human adaptability and alien confusion, as the first wave of assaults that should have overwhelmed entire cities instead found themselves entangled in a network of countermeasures, traps, and defensive strategies that humans had rehearsed in simulations that mirrored every conceivable scenario, and when the news feeds from the front lines reached the wider human colonies on Mars, Titan, and the orbital stations, a mixture of awe and resolve spread across the population, a realization that their species was no longer merely surviving in the galaxy but asserting itself with precision, determination, and lethal creativity. And as the Invar High Command convened to assess the catastrophic failures of their initial strategies, a young analyst named Kian Cho, stationed on Luna's defense grid, calculated the patterns of alien missteps and recommended not an escalation of firepower, which would have been the expected human reaction, but a series of deceptive maneuvers designed to bait the alien fleet into zones where orbital mines and magnetic flux traps could multiply their impact, an approach that combined patience, foresight, and ruthlessness, emblematic of the human way of war. And as the Invar forces began to falter, communication attempts that once demanded immediate obedience from lesser species were met with deliberate resistance, counter-messages embedded with false coordinates and fabricated fleet movements, leading alien admirals to redirect entire squadrons into ambushes, losing not only ships but their confidence in their intelligence gathering. And on Earth, President Laila Martinez addressed the global populace, not with fear but with measured resolve, framing humanity's defense. Not as an act of vengeance, but as the assertion of survival, a rallying call that resonated across colonies and planetary outposts, strengthening morale and fostering coordination among disparate human factions, uniting them with a clarity of purpose that contrasted sharply with the disarray among the invaders. And as weeks passed, what had begun as a defensive struggle transformed into a strategic offensive, humans not only repelling assaults but striking at supply lines, neutralizing communication relays, and exploiting weaknesses in alien engineering that had never been tested against adaptive human tactics, revealing that humanity's technological development, while not as flashy or overwhelming as some advanced civilizations, was marked by versatility, redundancy, and an uncanny ability to integrate old and new methodologies into systems that could respond to unforeseen challenges. And by the time the Invar fleet realized the scale of their misjudgment, humanity had not only defended its homeworld but had imposed territorial restrictions, launched precise counterstrikes on vulnerable outposts, and demonstrated that the rules of engagement had been rewritten, that from invasion to annihilation, it would be humanity dictating the terms, and the galaxy, long accustomed to measuring power through sheer firepower or numbers alone, was forced to confront a species whose strength lay in ingenuity, coordination, and an unyielding will to survive, a species that had studied, adapted, and evolved to a level where their opponents' assumptions became the very tools of their destruction, and in this crucible of conflict, humans discovered the extent of their potential, the true measure of what it meant to be underestimated, and then unleashed a combination of tactical brilliance, technological adaptability, and the unpredictable creativity that had allowed them to survive for millennia. And as the first major battle concluded, leaving entire sectors of the Invar fleet shattered, scattered, or in retreat, humanity had done more than survive. They had imposed their presence, reshaped expectations, and sent a clear message across the stars that Earth would no longer be treated as a peripheral concern, that any species considering conquest would first reckon with the depth of human resolve. And in that moment, as news of victory and devastation spread across communications networks from Mercury's orbital stations to the outer colonies near Neptune, a chilling but undeniable truth crystallized among all sentient observers. From invasion to annihilation, humans had written the rules of war in a language the galaxy had never truly understood, and any further miscalculation would be met with precision, adaptability, and a ferocity born not of hatred but of the simple, unbreakable instinct to survive and dominate when challenged, ensuring that Earth's voice, human ingenuity, and the calculated ruthlessness of a species underestimated for too long would resonate across the cosmos, shaping the future of interstellar warfare for generations to come. The aftermath of the first major engagements left both human and alien strategists reeling, but while the Invar High Command scrambled to reassess their assumptions, humanity capitalized on the chaos with precision and foresight, initiating Operation Iron Horizon, a multi-layered campaign designed to exploit every vulnerability exposed by the initial confrontation, and as orbital defenses had held firm, humans now extended their influence outward, targeting supply convoys and logistical hubs that the invaders had never considered critical, all while employing a combination of electronic warfare, psychological manipulation, and rapid deployment strike teams that leveraged Earth's intimate understanding of its solar system's topology, gravitational nuances, and orbital mechanics, allowing human pilots to weave through asteroid fields, slip between the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and strike with a lethality that made the vast Invar fleets appear cumbersome and slow. And as humans continued to advance, the alien leadership began to notice an alarming pattern. For every offensive they launched, humans responded with a counter that was not only effective but often anticipated their next maneuver, revealing that humanity's war doctrine was not reactive but deeply strategic, honed through centuries of conflict on a planetary scale, cultural memory, and the relentless drive to survive against far greater odds. And this pattern manifested in every theater of engagement, from the asteroid belt where human frigates used mined debris to ambush cruisers, to the outer colonies where automated defense arrays rigged with adaptive targeting systems decimated alien landing forces before they could set foot on solid ground, and within human command centers, officers like Commander Rajiv Patel orchestrated strikes that combined deception, timing, and overwhelming concentration of force at critical points, often diverting smaller alien units into traps while leaving the main human offensive free to target strategic nodes, and while these tactics inflicted heavy casualties, they also demonstrated something the aliens could neither understand nor counter easily. Humans fought with a holistic awareness of both technology and psychology, blending intuition, adaptability, and moral judgment into decisions that no AI or rigid military protocol could predict, and this awareness allowed humanity to turn what seemed like minor skirmishes into decisive blows, eroding alien morale and sowing confusion across the fleet. While on Earth, President Laila Martinez and her council worked tirelessly to coordinate global industry, research, and civilian participation, converting factories into shipyards and laboratories into rapid prototyping hubs, producing weapons, drones, and strategic systems at a pace the invaders could not fathom. And as humanity refined these capabilities, alien diplomats attempted frantic negotiations, offering ceasefires, partial withdrawals, and even pledges of non-aggression in exchange for concessions, all of which were met with cautious, calculated responses designed to extract intelligence, consolidate gains, and further demonstrate that humans were not a species to be bargained with lightly, but rather a power to be respected, studied, and, if provoked, decisively countered. And as weeks turned into months, the human-led coalition of defense forces expanded to include not only the planets of the solar system, but also outlying research stations, mining colonies, and orbital habitats, all integrated into a network of surveillance, communication, and rapid response that allowed for instantaneous reaction to alien maneuvers. And in the midst of this network, a young tactical prodigy named Amara Liu emerged, her unconventional strategies turning potential stalemates into opportunities, using the aliens' own overconfidence and reliance on predictable protocols against them, orchestrating feints, ambushes, and supply chain disruptions that cripple the Invar fleet's operational tempo, while simultaneously maintaining a defensive posture around critical human population centers, ensuring that humanity's survival remained absolute even as it inflicted escalating losses on the invaders. And these victories, while tactical, carried a psychological weight that reverberated across the galaxy, as alien species watching the conflict began to reassess their perceptions of human potential, sending delegations to observe and even learn from humanity's unique approach to warfare, noting that humans combine strategic patience, adaptive technology, and moral resolve in ways that produce results far beyond what raw firepower or fleet size could accomplish. And within the command halls of the Invar, cracks began to form not only in operational cohesion but in political unity, as sub-factions debated whether continued aggression against a species capable of such feats was worth the mounting losses. Yet each delay or misstep was met with further human initiative, as pilots, engineers, and commanders coordinated strikes that increasingly resembled an orchestration of symphonic precision rather than mere military maneuvers. And as humans pushed deeper into contested space, they encountered remnants of ancient alien civilizations whose technology had long been dismissed as myth, adapting these discoveries into their arsenal with a speed that confounded the Invar and turned even historical curiosity into strategic advantage. While intelligence networks spread across human and alien territories collected, analyzed, and applied data in near real time, allowing Earth's leaders to not only predict enemy movements but shape the battlefield itself, drawing opponents into zones of maximal disadvantage and ensuring that every engagement tilted further in humanity's favor. And throughout all of this, the human spirit, resilient, innovative, and relentless, manifested in acts both grand and subtle. Medics improvising triage systems under orbital bombardment, engineers patching critical reactors mid-combat, civilians on isolated colonies providing key reconnaissance data, all contributing to a force multiplier effect that transformed what might have been simple survival into a demonstration of dominance. And as the Invar fleet's strength dwindled, humanity began to dictate the tempo of the war, turning defensive necessity into offensive inevitability, signaling to the galaxy that from the first attack to the unfolding annihilation of their opponents' plans, humans were no longer merely defending their home but asserting their right to define the rules of engagement across the stars. And in this relentless expansion of control and influence, it became clear that the initial invasion had inadvertently triggered a transformation, converting humanity from perceived backwater species into a formidable, unyielding power whose mastery of strategy, technology, and adaptability would leave a permanent mark on galactic history. And the universe itself, having underestimated Earth and its inhabitants, would never again approach the matter lightly, as humans continued to write the rules, from invasion to annihilation, proving with every calculated strike that their potential for both defense and retribution was as boundless as the stars themselves. As the human offensive expanded deeper into contested space, the scale and sophistication of their operations became increasingly apparent, demonstrating a mastery of logistics, tactics, and adaptive warfare that even the most advanced alien strategists struggled to comprehend, and the solar system itself became a sprawling theater of conflict, with Earth as a command center, Mars and its moons serving as staging grounds for fleet deployments, and orbital stations around Jupiter, Saturn, and the asteroid belt functioning as observation posts, supply depots, and advanced research platforms, all networked into a real-time intelligence matrix that allowed humanity to anticipate and manipulate enemy movements with uncanny precision. And within this matrix, human commanders like Admiral Elena Vargas and Commander Raja Patel coordinated multi-pronged attacks that integrated orbital bombardments, stealth fighter sorties, automated drone swarms, and electronic warfare to create cascading effects that crippled Invar fleets before they could mount cohesive resistance. And while alien admirals relied on brute force, humans relied on pattern recognition, predictive modeling, and adaptive strategy, often exploiting the very arrogance and rigid protocols that had guided Invar Command decisions for generations. And on Earth, President Laila Martinez oversaw not only military operations but also the synchronization of global industry, converting civilian infrastructure into support systems for the war effort, mobilizing engineers, scientists, and technicians to rapidly innovate in response to battlefield discoveries, while psychologists and cultural analysts work to understand alien behavior, predicting overconfidence, hesitation, or rigid thinking that could be turned to humanity's advantage. And these combined efforts produce a feedback loop of efficiency and adaptability that amplified every human action, allowing smaller forces to achieve results disproportionate to their size. And as humans moved into the outer territories once controlled by the Invar, they encountered defensive installations designed to halt any offensive, yet each obstacle was met with a combination of ingenuity and improvisation, as teams devised ways to bypass, neutralize, or even turn enemy systems against their creators, integrating alien technology into human designs with speed and precision that reflected not only technical skill but the cognitive flexibility that had long been humanity's secret weapon. And in the midst of these operations, individual heroism and collective coordination intertwined seamlessly, with pilots like Amara Liu leading daring raids through asteroid belts and gravity wells, engineers like Malik Hassan retrofitting captured cruisers for human use, and analysts like Kian Cho deciphering enemy command codes to create opportunities for decisive strikes. While on the planetary surface, humans prepared for worst-case scenarios, reinforcing cities, underground facilities, and resource depots, ensuring that even if orbital defenses failed temporarily, humanity could continue the fight without losing momentum. And as these measures unfolded, the Invar leadership began to recognize a troubling reality. Humans were not merely surviving. They were reshaping the conflict on their terms, dictating where battles would occur, how engagements would unfold, and when strikes would land, turning the invaders' assumptions against them in a relentless cycle that sapped morale and exposed weaknesses. And as the months of conflict wore on, humanity's methods evolved further, incorporating psychological operations that disrupted alien coordination, propaganda campaigns that fostered dissent among occupied or allied species, and covert sabotage that targeted critical supply lines and energy nodes, demonstrating a holistic understanding of warfare that extended far beyond mere firepower, while simultaneous diplomatic initiatives maintained contact with neutral species and potential allies, offering protection and support in exchange for intelligence, resources, or sanctuary, thereby reinforcing humanity's influence and extending the battlefield into realms the Invar had never anticipated. And as victories accumulated, even minor skirmishes carried symbolic weight, with each human success broadcast across communication networks to inspire both fear and respect, shaping not only the course of the war but the perception of humanity as a formidable force in the eyes of the galaxy. And these cumulative efforts reveal the core of human strength, the ability to synthesize knowledge, technology, and culture into strategies that were simultaneously adaptive, anticipatory, and decisive, allowing humans to strike with precision and creativity at multiple points of the enemy's structure, forcing the Invar to react rather than act, a dynamic that reversed the flow of power, turning the initial invasion into a campaign of human dictated consequences, and as the alien fleet reeled under continuous pressure, isolated units cut off from command, losing cohesion and effectiveness, humanity began to establish forward positions in former enemy space, not merely as occupied territories, but as integrated hubs for ongoing operations, research, and defense, demonstrating capacity to not only destroy but to absorb, adapt, and repurpose, while simultaneously continuing to innovate in response to the evolving theater of war. With experimental technologies tested in live engagements, each success building upon the last, and even as the Invar leadership scrambled to contain losses, their plans were systematically undermined by human foresight, rapid adaptation, and the relentless will to survive. And with each engagement, the galaxy began to witness a species whose capacity for warfare was inseparable from its intelligence, creativity, and resilience, a civilization transforming conflict into both an existential defense and a display of capability, rewriting the rules of engagement from invasion to annihilation, proving that humans were not only capable of surviving galactic war but of shaping its course, dictating its tempo, and ensuring that the consequences for any who underestimated them would be absolute, irreversible, and total, and as the solar system became a nexus of calculated strikes, counterstrikes, and strategic positioning, humanity's dominance in the war was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty, and the stars themselves seemed to bend under the weight of human ingenuity, as a species once dismissed as minor now commanded the battlefield, not through sheer numbers, but through mastery of strategy, technology, and the unyielding drive that had carried them from scattered tribes to interstellar conquerors, leaving the Invar and the wider galaxy with a single, undeniable truth: humans write the rules, and from invasion to annihilation, they do so without hesitation, without error, and with the ruthless clarity of a species fully awakened to its own potential. With the Invar fleet reeling and their command structures fractured, humanity pressed the advantage, transforming defensive victories into a full-scale campaign of calculated domination, and as orbital and planetary defenses were reinforced across human-occupied sectors, engineers and scientists worked around the clock to enhance existing fleets, retrofitting captured alien vessels with human-designed weaponry, shielding, and propulsion systems, creating hybrid ships that combined alien firepower with human adaptability, while tacticians like Commander Rajat Patel orchestrated simultaneous assaults across multiple fronts, leveraging the solar system's natural features, from asteroid belts to gravitational anomalies, as force multipliers, drawing enemy units into traps where mines, electromagnetic pulses, and rapid-strike fighter wings could decimate them. And every engagement revealed the systematic brilliance of humanity's approach, instead of relying solely on overwhelming firepower. Humans integrated intelligence, reconnaissance, and improvisation into an operational doctrine that was flexible, adaptive, and nearly impossible for the Invar to predict. While on Earth, President Laila Martinez oversaw the expansion of interstellar communications networks, ensuring that every fleet, colony, and research station operated in near-perfect synchronization, allowing rapid dissemination of battlefield intelligence, coordination of simultaneous strikes, and the development of countermeasures against evolving alien tactics. And within this coordinated effort, young tactical prodigies such as Amara Liu and Kian Cho emerged, devising unorthodox maneuvers that drew enemy squadrons into false corridors, manipulated alien sensors, and exploited weaknesses in fleet formations, turning even minor units into forces capable of catastrophic impact. And as humans advanced into contested zones, they discovered abandoned outposts and relics of civilizations previously thought extinct, integrating these findings into their war effort with speed and ingenuity, creating technologies and strategies that the Invar could neither anticipate nor counter, while simultaneous psychological operations undermined alien morale, broadcasting evidence of their failures, strategic missteps, and the futility of resistance, further destabilizing the cohesion of the invaders. And as months turned into campaigns, humanity expanded beyond mere survival, asserting control over vital star lanes, resource-rich asteroids, and critical orbital platforms, using both force and diplomacy to solidify alliances with neutral or threatened species, demonstrating a blend of strength and strategic foresight that reshaped the political landscape of the galaxy. And while alien admirals debated retreats and reorganizations, human fleets moved with precise timing, exploiting miscalculations and weaknesses with a ruthlessness tempered by intelligence and experience. systematically dismantling command hierarchies, severing supply chains, and forcing enemy units into reactive positions. And as humans pressed further, their operational networks demonstrated not only technological superiority, but the inherent advantage of creativity, collaboration, and adaptability, enabling coordinated strikes on multiple fronts that seemed impossible for a species so numerically outnumbered to sustain. And within these battles, individual acts of heroism, from pilots executing near-impossible maneuvers to engineers repairing critical systems under fire, blended seamlessly with large-scale strategy, creating a force multiplier effect that amplified every human action beyond its apparent scale, while alien scientists struggled to counter innovations in propulsion, weaponry, and defensive measures that humans developed on the fly, turning captured technology, field experiments, and environmental factors into tools of domination. And as the war unfolded, humanity also focused on safeguarding civilian populations and infrastructure, ensuring continuity of governance, research, and resource production, which reinforced resilience and morale while denying the Invar any psychological leverage. And through these combined efforts, humans demonstrated the full spectrum of warfare mastery, strategic foresight, adaptive technology, moral resolve, and the ability to convert setbacks into opportunities, allowing them to dictate the pace, location, and terms of conflict. And as successive victories accumulated, the Invar began to recognize the irreversible shift of power, the realization that their initial misjudgment had unleashed a force capable not only of defense but of reshaping the war itself. And with each planet, station, and fleet brought under human influence, the message was clear. Humanity had moved from survival to supremacy, transforming the solar system and its environs into a stage where the rules of war were written not by brute strength alone, but by ingenuity, coordination, and the unyielding will of the species that refused to be underestimated. And as the galaxy watched, the audacity, precision, and relentless drive of humans redefined interstellar conflict, proving that from invasion to annihilation, the architects of war were no longer the invaders or the very species they had sought to subdue. And in the midst of these campaigns, the Invar leadership faced not just tactical defeat but existential reckoning, as their inability to adapt, their reliance on assumptions, and their failure to recognize the full potential of humanity ensured that every countermeasure will be anticipated, every advance neutralized, and every hope of subjugation shattered, leaving them to witness the relentless ascent of a civilization whose mastery of strategy, technology, and adaptive warfare had transformed what began as a desperate defense into a decisive, unstoppable offensive that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations, a stark reminder that to underestimate humans was to invite total annihilation. As the human campaign pushed deeper into former Invar-held territory, the war evolved from tactical skirmishes into a fully orchestrated theater of interstellar dominance, with every maneuver, strike, and feint designed to exploit the psychological and strategic weaknesses of the invaders. And the human approach to warfare revealed itself as a fusion of adaptive technology, predictive intelligence, and unrelenting creativity, allowing relatively small fleets to achieve effects that rivaled entire Invar armadas. While on Earth, President Laila Martinez coordinated the integration of civilian industry, research laboratories, and educational institutions into a unified support network that not only maintained production of war material but accelerated the development of new weapons, shields, and propulsion systems, ensuring humanity's ability to innovate in real time. And as these innovations rolled out across the solar system, the impact on the battlefield was immediate, with human pilots exploiting gravitational anomalies, asteroid clusters, and orbital irregularities to strike enemy vessels with precision, often from angles considered impossible, while automated drone swarms adapted to alien maneuvers, learning from each encounter and feeding data back into Central Command, allowing subsequent strikes to anticipate and counter Invar tactics before they were fully executed. And this integration of adaptive artificial intelligence, human intuition, and real-time intelligence created a feedback loop that magnified the effectiveness of every engagement, forcing alien commanders to confront the realization that they were no longer setting the tempo of the conflict, but reacting to the relentless ingenuity of a species they had once dismissed. And as humans advanced through contested sectors, they discovered remnants of ancient civilizations, forgotten technologies, and adaptive environmental mechanisms, integrating these into their strategic arsenal to further tipped the scales, while simultaneously deploying psychological operations designed to fracture enemy morale, broadcast human victories, and sow distrust within alien ranks, and these combined methods turned isolated victories into cascading successes, as the Invar fleet found itself repeatedly outmaneuvered, misled, and systematically weakened, unable to recover from continuous pressure, while human commanders leveraged every advantage, from orbital superiority to ground-based sabotage, creating a multifaceted threat that the Invar could neither predict nor withstand. And within this context, individual acts of brilliance amplified the overall campaign. Pilots like Amara Liu executed high-risk, high-reward raids that dismantled critical installations. Engineers like Malik Hassan reproposed alien systems to enhance human capabilities mid-battle. And analysts like Ken Cho deciphered encrypted communications, feeding actionable intelligence to strike teams with. Perfect timing. And as these coordinated efforts unfolded, human forces extended their control over vital star lanes, resource-rich asteroids, and abandoned stations, integrating them into the operational network to ensure sustained pressure while denying the Invar any opportunity to regroup. And as months passed, the cumulative effect of continuous human innovation, strategic foresight, and psychological dominance became undeniable, with alien units experiencing mounting losses, fractured communication, and increasing hesitation in every theater of conflict, while human forces, by contrast, gained confidence, cohesion, and the ability to anticipate not only enemy maneuvers but their likely mistakes, turning predicted weaknesses into decisive victories. And as humans pushed the boundaries of former Invar territory, they established forward operating bases that served not only as defensive bulwarks but as launch points for further campaigns, research hubs for technological advancement, and symbols of human resolve, while simultaneously maintaining the safety of civilian populations and ensuring that governance, supply chains, and communication networks remained fully operational, a holistic approach that reflected humanity's long-term strategic thinking, moral discipline, and ability to balance immediate tactical success with sustained operational advantage. And as these integrated campaigns unfolded, the galaxy witnessed a species whose power was measured not merely in firepower but in adaptability, ingenuity, and the capacity to exploit every opportunity, a species whose actions dictated the pace, terms, and outcome of the war, rewriting the rules of engagement and demonstrating unequivocally that from invasion to annihilation, humanity was not only capable of surviving galactic conflict but of mastering it, imposing order where chaos had reigned, and exacting consequences that no adversary would soon forget. And as the Invar leadership confronted the scale of their misjudgment, they realized that the initial assumption that humans were a minor, defenseless species had unleashed a force whose capabilities exceeded all expectations, turning a campaign intended to subdue into a war dictated entirely by human strategy, precision, and unyielding will, proving that in the vast expanse of the galaxy, underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake, one that would resonate across generations, star systems, and civilizations, establishing Earth and its inhabitants not just as survivors, but as masters of warfare, strategy, and interstellar influence. With the Invar forces in disarray and their command fractured, humanity shifted from reactive engagements to a fully orchestrated offensive campaign that reshaped the strategic map of the solar system and beyond, and human fleets, though smaller in number, leveraged precision, coordination, and adaptability to exploit every weakness in alien formations, striking simultaneously on multiple fronts with surgical accuracy while automated drones, retrofitted alien vessels, and human fighters created a web of interlocking assaults that overwhelmed isolated enemy units. And on Earth, President Laila Martinez oversaw the expansion of production and research efforts, coordinating a global network of factories, laboratories, and orbital construction hubs to ensure continuous innovation and deployment of new technologies. From adaptive shielding and energy weapons to advanced propulsion systems capable of exploiting gravitational anomalies, while human analysts like Ken Cho predicted enemy movements with uncanny precision, allowing commanders to preposition forces and manipulate the battlefield in ways that rendered alien numerical superiority meaningless. And within this theater, pilots such as Amara Liu executed high-risk maneuvers through asteroid belts and planetary rings, disabling entire squadrons and capturing critical assets, while engineers like Malik Hassan converted captured Invar technology into tools for further human advantage, creating hybrid systems that multiplied the effectiveness of every strike, and as these campaigns progressed, humanity demonstrated a unique blend of patience, foresight, and ruthless efficiency, drawing alien forces into traps, feints, and controlled engagements that amplified losses and forced retreat, while simultaneously protecting civilian populations and vital infrastructure, ensuring continuity of governance, resource production, and morale. And as months passed, the galaxy began to recognize a stark transformation. Humans were no longer defenders of a single planet, but masters of operational art, integrating intelligence, technology, and psychological insight into a cohesive force capable of dictating the tempo, location, and outcome of conflict across multiple star systems, and even as the Invar attempted desperate countermeasures, ranging from fleet redeployments to propaganda campaigns and diplomatic overtures. Human strategy anticipated and neutralized each, turning attempted solutions into further vulnerabilities. And as forward bases were established on former enemy territories, humans leveraged these positions to control resource flows, secure critical star lanes, and project power further into contested space, while simultaneously training allied species in defensive and tactical operations, fostering loyalty, and expanding the human sphere of influence. And in every engagement, humans combined innovation with audacity, using orbital bombardments, stealth strikes, and adaptive, electronic warfare to dismantle enemy formations, while psychological operations broadcast human victories, demoralizing alien troops and turning entire fleets into ineffective tools of retreat. And as successive victories accumulated, humanity's reputation spread across the galaxy, shifting perceptions of what it meant to be underestimated. And within the command centers of the Invar, panic and disbelief took hold as leaders realized that their initial calculations, based on incomplete intelligence, outdated assumptions, and cultural bias, had entirely misjudged human capability, and every failed maneuver, lost fleet, and captured outpost reinforced the truth that humans fought not merely with force but with foresight, ingenuity, and an unyielding will to survive and dominate, turning the war into a showcase of the species' unmatched adaptability, resilience, and strategic brilliance. And as the solar system and surrounding space fell increasingly under human control, the Invar faced a reckoning. Their invasion had not only failed but had unleashed a counterforce that redefined warfare on a galactic scale, and from this point forward, humanity's capacity to integrate technology, intelligence, and moral resolve into decisive action became the benchmark against which all interstellar powers would be measured, ensuring that from invasion to annihilation, humans had not only survived but asserted absolute authority over the conflict, rewriting the rules of engagement, setting the stage for the final confrontation, and leaving the galaxy with a single, undeniable truth. To underestimate humanity was to invite total, calculated, and unrelenting destruction. The culmination of humanity's campaign against the Invar was nothing short of cataclysmic, a decisive orchestration of strategy, technology, and unrelenting human will that transformed what had begun as a defensive struggle into the absolute dominance of a species once underestimated. And as human fleets converged on the remaining Invar strongholds, every strike was calculated not only to disable enemy assets, but to demonstrate the sheer precision, adaptability, and foresight that had defined human operations from the very first encounter, with orbital bombardments synchronized to the second, fighter wings exploiting gravitational corridors and asteroid clusters to bypass defenses, and adaptive drone swarms executing maneuvers that no Invar system had ever accounted for, while on Earth, President Laila Martinez and her council maintained a delicate balance between offensive operations and the protection of civilian infrastructure, ensuring that governance, supply chains, and morale remained intact even as humanity pressed forward with relentless efficiency. And as the final theaters of conflict unfolded, humans revealed yet another aspect of their superiority: the ability to coordinate multi-theater operations across vast distances, integrating intelligence, tactical innovation, and psychological insight to dismantle alien cohesion, erode morale, and force surrender on their own terms, while engineers like Malik Hassan and tactical prodigies like Amara Liu repurposed, captured alien technology mid-battle, creating hybrid systems that multiplied force effectiveness, exploited enemy vulnerabilities, and ensured that each engagement not only neutralized threats but reshaped the operational landscape to humanity's advantage. And in every engagement, humans combined audacity with patience, striking where the Invar expected nothing, retreating only to lure the enemy into traps, and turning desperation into opportunity, while simultaneously broadcasting the inevitability of human victory across alien communication networks, undermining confidence, fostering panic, and accelerating collapse of command structures. And as a final Invar fleets attempted to regroup, they found themselves trapped, their movements anticipated, their strategies countered, and their morale shattered, leaving isolated units to face the relentless might of human innovation, coordination, and resolve. And as each stronghold fell, humanity advanced not with reckless rage, but with calculated precision, neutralizing threats while securing resources, rescuing enslaved or endangered species, and establishing operational hubs that would serve both as defensive positions and platforms for further exploration and influence, while simultaneously demonstrating the moral dimension of their strength, the ability to protect, preserve, and strategically eliminate only what was necessary to secure survival and dominance, a level of warfare intelligence that no Invar system could anticipate. And as the final battle concluded, the galaxy bore witness to a species that had not merely defended its homeworld but had redefined interstellar conflict itself, turning invasion into annihilation, and annihilation into a demonstration of absolute mastery, with humanity dictating the terms of engagement, projecting power with both precision and foresight, and leaving a legacy of ingenuity, resilience, and calculated ruthlessness that would resonate across generations, species, and star systems. And as the remnants of the Invar leadership faced their defeat, they understood with irreversible clarity that their misjudgment, the assumption that humans were weak, compliant, or primitive, had unleashed a force that could not be contained, predicted, or bargained with, a civilization whose capacity for adaptation, coordination, and strategic brilliance had rewritten the rules of war, ensuring that from this day forward, any species considering aggression against Earth would confront the full spectrum of human capability. And as humanity stood victorious among the stars, their fleets, colonies, and operational networks symbolized not only survival but supremacy, the culmination of ingenuity honed through centuries of struggle, creativity tempered by discipline, and an unyielding will to endure and dominate. And in that ultimate moment, it was clear to all observers, alien and human alike, that the era of underestimation was over, and from invasion to annihilation, humans had written the rules of war, and the galaxy would never forget that the underestimated species had become the inevitable masters of their fate.